Welcome to the Vision Podcast. In these podcasts, we cover a range of topics designed to ease the transition to the job market. Developed by and for students, the Vision program helps them acquire the skills they need to pursue a fulfilling career in any field. Our names are Rose and Louis-Jacques, and we're PhD students. We'll be your hosts for this special podcast on project management. Since we're not experts on the subject, we're joined today by Georges Alexandre, or G-A, a project management enthusiast who knows the field like the back of his hand.
So, G-A, what is project management?
Well, that's a big one. In general, project management, you have two words there, right? So a project is pretty much anything with a beginning and with an end. So anything temporary, basically, you are with a project in your hand. Management is, I would say, more subtle, right? Managing, so project management. In management, you're trying to make decisions, right? So I teach at the Faculté des Sciences d'Administration here at Laval University. And basically, what we teach students there is to make decisions rationally, if possible. But it's not always possible, right? But basically, project management is the art of making decisions based on something pretty much temporary.
And so we often hear about project management as being like a type of a job, but is it rather a kind of a working method instead?
It's pretty much a bit of both, right? Of course, when you're doing project management, you can be a project manager. I mean, this is a job title. So yes, it does exist. However, usually, whether you like it or not, we all do projects like all day long, just waking up in the morning, right? Making breakfast. This is a project in itself. So of course, we manage bigger projects in general. When we do research, when we organizing events, launching products, launching companies, right? So basically it can be a bit of everything. So yes, there are job titles that are called like project manager, but whether or not you're called a project manager, most likely you are managing projects in your daily life.
Mm-hmm. Earlier, you said that project management is based on decision-making. So is there a good way to make decisions while I manage a project?
Most likely, yes. Hopefully. It's not about being right or wrong, right? I think it's about being as rational as possible, right? So when we're making decisions, we're trying to find criteria, which will kind of help us to make right decisions, right? Usually we make our decision based on either instinct or emotions. That's what we do in our daily lives. So when you're managing a project, you're just trying to find criteria just to help you to stay rational in your decision-making process. And that's what we teach students in administrations.
And you talked about companies having project management, but what kind of sizes of companies use project management as their tool or method?
All sizes, basically. You have startup companies with 1, 2, 3 employees. You have huge companies with thousands of employees. Government also, they manage projects. So banks, whatever, right? Universities, we do all kind of projects. Yeah. When you do your research, right? That's what you're doing as well. So basically, no matter the size of a company you want to work with, most likely you will be managing projects sooner or later.
And is project management different from when you're working in a small company or when you're like a startup or if you're working for the government? Well, I guess it's pretty different when you're managing projects in a startup that when you're managing projects for the government.
It can be different, right? But basically, managing a project is managing a project. So, of course, if you're working for a smaller structure, you better be good at pretty much everything. So you will have to do a bit of everything. So managing financial resources, human resources, material resources. So you will do a bit of both. If you're working in a larger structure, most likely you will be a bit more specialized. So that's why sometimes, especially in bigger companies, they hire specific jobs for specific duties, such as IT project manager or financial project manager or that kind of stuff. So the bigger the structure is, usually the most specialized you need to be.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about specialization, do you require a prior a degree or something to get you a head start in project management, or can you do it with bare knowledge and just throw yourself in it and learn from that?
It depends on you, right? If you feel more comfortable doing a degree or doing an actual certification, it exists, right? At Laval University, we have programs in project management, so it does exist. You can also have your own certification that you can find easily online. So yes, that exists. But you can also, just learn by doing it. That's also possible in project management. So yes, for those of you who prefer to go through a proper program, you have that option. But it doesn't have to be like that. I like to remind myself that business in general, but this is also true for project management, is what 80% common sense and about 20% knowledge and skills. So personally, I rather work with that 80% than just focusing on that last 20%. So, but that's up to me. But everything is possible.
And I think during our graduate studies, I think we gather a lot of knowledge or a lot of skills that we can then use in project management, because we're basically managing a project, but for 2 years in case of a master's, or 3 or 4 years. Let's not hope 7 years for a PhD project. But
3 is not a lot, but maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah.
But common sense is always important. I don't do research, but I'm pretty sure that you need common sense to do research as well. So that is absolutely part of that. You don't learn common sense, right? You just have it inside of you, and that's pretty much what business is about. That's pretty much what project management is about. So don't worry too much about if you feel like you're lacking skills. Yes, you can find these skills somewhere, but still, common sense, 80% of the problem's there.
And you said that we acquire a lot of skills during our academic curriculum. If that can be a master's or a PhD. But do you have any tips and tricks to facilitate the transfer of these skills from academia to the workplace?
No matter the project you're working on, pretty much the skills are always similar, right? No matter the kind of studies you're doing in business administration, most likely you will be learning 4 things, right? The art of planning, the art of organizing, the art of managing, and the art of controlling or evaluating, right? So pretty much any project or any managing, whatever you want to manage, right? Anything is related to either one of these things. So if you're okay with planning, organizing, managing things or people, and most likely evaluating as well, you're on the right track, right? So basically, no matter the kind of project you're working, the skills are pretty much similar.
And so when you get into looking for jobs, how do you sell yourself? How do you say, okay, I have everything that you just told. I think I have it. Maybe if I don't have everything, let's just try. So how do you get that message to basically the interviewer and people that take decisions on who and why are they employed?
You mean if you want to find a job there?
Yeah.
Usually, first of all, knowing your own skills. So knowing your own strengths, but also weaknesses. That's kind of important. But that's also very important to know your objectives. Right? The art of planning is pretty much the art of setting objectives to yourself or for your team. So what do you want to achieve with your own life, right? With your own professional life? That would be step 1. Step 2 would be, all right, what are my skills? So my strengths and weaknesses. Once I know that, it's going to be a bit easier for me to find the job I'm looking for, right? So that may be helpful. Yeah.
And also, do you think, is skills more important than soft skills, like hard technical skills? Are they more important than soft skills? So maybe you're interviewing me and you're just you just read my CV. So what do you want to know about me as a project manager?
Soft skills, it's always a good start, right? You can always start with soft skills like communication, like leadership, like motivation, being a kind person. That's also a very important skills, right? So relational skills is highly, highly important. As a potential employer, of course, when you're reviewing resumes, you're reviewing CVs, of course, all CVs pretty look alike. They're always very, very similar. So what makes you hire somebody over somebody else? Usually it's what you project as a personality. What do you like? What do you prefer? What's your personality, right? Are you a kind person? Are you fun to work with, right? If you're fun to work with, most likely I will be hiring you, right? So work on personality, not necessarily only on skills. Skills will help you, but your personality is a valuable asset as well.
When you want to find a job, like you have to get yourself out there, make yourself known. So is it important to have mentors to do that? And what to look for when you want to look for a mentor?
Well, no matter what kind of project you're working, my best advice is always try not to do it on your own, right? Find people who can actually work with you, right? Of course, you have strengths, but also have weaknesses. So don't do it alone. So yes, mentorship can be a very good step in the right direction, right? You know what you need to work on. So finding someone who has that expertise may be a very, very good reflex, right? And if you just go on Google and you just type mentorship or mentorat in French, I mean, it works, right? You have plenty of options, plenty of resources, organization, association who are actually there to help you guys. And here at Laval University, we have Entrepreneuriat Laval, Entrepreneuriat U Laval. One of their programs is actually a mentorship program. So yes, finding a mentor is good, but finding any kind of help is still very important in general, right? If you don't like to manage numbers, I mean, you can find somebody who has that strength. So yes, mentorship is one step in the right direction, but finding a team, finding people just to make sure that will help you to overwhelm your own weaknesses, I mean, that is also a step in the right direction.
So I guess this is also leading to leadership. So how to, I think, to become a better project manager, you have to know your own weaknesses and skills, but also know these things about your team and how to manage everything, and also having empathy. And we discussed a lot about that in the previous podcasts.
Yeah, leadership is pretty much, I would say, the most complex element of all business administration, right? I mean, it's something that's tough to cover, right? But leadership is about leading a team or leading resources in general. So yes, you can be a good leader, but you don't learn that in a book. Mm-hmm. It has to do with your skills, with what you want, what you are as a person, right? But learning how to communicate your message, learning how to motivate people. I mean, there are some small tricks you can apply, but all of those tricks usually are all about common sense, making sure that you know how people think, what can motivate people, right? Empathy is kind of very, very important in leadership. And so is it for project management or any other fields in business administration. So it's still the same thing, the same language, right? Common sense over skills.
A question that comes to mind would be how to communicate your message effectively, like when you do networking events or when you want to meet new people or you use social media. Like, how can you communicate your values, like the person you are, in order to land the job or just find new collaborators?
Yeah, usually when we want to convince people, I mean, I would say we have the habit, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but we have the habit of giving arguments, right? Saying, all right, I'm good at this. Here is my resume. Here are my credentials. Here's what I do, right? And usually we do that thinking that it will help us to convince someone. And we kind of forget that if we want to convince someone, the person in front of us has to do its own way of thinking. I mean, they have to make their own decisions, right? So in other words, if we want to convince someone, yes, we can bring up some arguments, but questioning the other person on their objectives, their preferences, what they're looking for, what they do, how they do that. I mean, questioning, the art of questioning is also very important if we want to convince people, right? So yes, you can follow steps, right? If you want to convince somebody, usually step one is always, first of all, do your research. Know who you're talking to, right? Who you want to talk to. What is their job title? What is its objectives, right? What do they want to do? Where exactly do they see themselves in 5 years? What are their pain points, right? So first of all, do your research and then bring up some question to understand exactly what the other person is looking for. And then you can bring up some argument just to show your own value, right? But questions first and then argument, not the other way around.
And I think to finish it off, would you have some habits to like develop right now to help us like in project management? Or it could be basically on the marketplace when you're looking for, or you have a job. What right now could we do to improve our basically leadership and everything?
Sure. Well, project management, everyone is already doing it, right? So if you want to be a good project manager, first of all, be aware that you're already doing it. Maybe at a small scale, maybe when you wake up in the morning and you want to get out of bed, that can be a project, right? So you're already managing projects, whether you know it or not. So being aware of that is already a good step in the right direction. Once this is done, yes, you can find some skills. Yes, you can follow some certification. You can follow some training. All of that, it's all good, right? But remember that common sense is pretty much 80% of the problem you have to solve, right? So yes, you do have skills. Yes, you do have all that stuff. But being aware that project management is pretty much everywhere in your daily life, maybe that will help you to do good and to find what you're looking for. Maybe that can be useful.
And I think concerning, or rather regarding our graduate studies, I don't know about you, Rose, but I think if you just want a peek at what project management is, I think student like organization or just student implication as a whole just opens so many doors and gives you a lot of prior knowledge that when you'll be like in a project management setting, you'll know kind of what to do, or, oh yeah, I've already been there and I've done that. So I know basically how to manage a budget or manage people or something like that. So interrelational skills.
Of course. And by the way, managing a budget doesn't have to be very complicated, right? Managing a budget is pretty much the art of adding and subtracting. So basically, we all know that 5 minus 2 equals 3. So basically you have revenues, you have costs, and you have basically profits. So if you take your revenue, you subtract the cost, then it gives you a profit. There you go. You know how to make a budget. So it doesn't have to be complicated, right? That's what I'm saying. We're always doing budgets. We're always managing projects in our daily lives. So it can be complicated, but it doesn't have to. It can be a small scale project, and we're already doing it in our daily lives.
But you're very right, Louis-Jacques, about student implication and the fact that we learn so many things from it, like administrative structures, budgeting, and then relationships with people. Oftentimes you'll be in a position of leadership, how you can test things like, is it good does it work if I talk to this person this way? And then you learn that it might not work with another person. If I need something, I'll ask my person, but then is this person, does she know all my needs? Does she understand them? Okay. So I feel like one thing is that if you consider wanting to work in project management, you should involve yourself in some committees or just participate in your student committees and try to learn from that. And next thing you know, you'll be working full on in project management.
And I think that's also my personal motto as live to learn, basically. So you won't know if you're not good at it if you haven't tried it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid of missing out. I mean, that is so important. Project management can be complicated, but it doesn't have to be like that, right? We're all doing that, and we can all do that without too many problems.
So thank you so much. So basically, in this quick podcast in English, we learned that project management is more of a skill rather than a job per se. So, and it's also present in a large proportion of jobs. So basically, you'll have to do project management in probably the future job you'll be doing. So thank you for taking the time to be with us today, G-A. And we also invite you to consult or listen to the podcast in French, as we'll be discussing more in depth of the different subjects we had in this podcast.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.